Almost everybody loves to travel. And the older generation, in particular, loves a guided tour. The coach, the headsets, the man at the front who knows which cathedral is which, where the clean restrooms are, and which cafe won't rob you blind. Nobody has to plan anything. You pay once, you get on the bus, and for 2 weeks, somebody else carries the weight of every decision. That's the whole appeal, and it's a good one. Margaret was no exception. 61, retired, widowed, traveling alone, and by her own account, she'd been saving for a trip like this one for 4 years. 12 days through Europe on a full-size coach with 43 other passengers, a driver, and one guide named Wes, who had been doing this job for 19 years and honestly believed there was no type of human being left that could surprise him. He was wrong. And he found out how wrong in the first hour, standing beside the luggage bay in Amsterdam with a clipboard in his hand, and no idea that the woman in the beige raincoat was going to become the single most famous passenger in the history of his company. Not because of anything she did, but because of the countless complaints he received from her during the trip. Because here's the thing about being a tour guide. You are not a historian. You are not a driver. You are a combination of babysitter, air traffic controller, translator, medic, referee, and lightning rod. And the job is 90% people and 10% Europe. In 19 years, Wes had talked a man out of a Swiss police station, found a lost hearing aid in a fountain in Salzburg, carried a woman's suitcase up 4 flights in Bruges because the elevator was the size of a phone booth, and once spent an entire afternoon convincing a retired schoolteacher that the Mona Lisa is genuinely that small and nobody had swapped it out for a smaller one. He'd been yelled at, hugged, tipped, and proposed to. He'd had complaints, plenty of them, about pillows, about rain, about the fact that Europe has stairs. Every guide has a folder of those in his head. They come, they go. They stop mattering the moment the last suitcase comes off the bus. Margaret was different. She started complaining in the first hour, and she never stopped. And every night, in a hotel room she'd paid extra to have all to herself, she sat down with that yellow legal pad and wrote it all up. Numbered, dated, timed to the minute. This is what she wrote down. Somewhere between Paris and the Loire Valley, on a stretch of motorway with nothing outside the windows but hedges and a grain silo, Margaret got out of her seat and walked to the front of a moving coach. Wes caught her in the mirror and assumed somebody was sick. Nobody was sick. She reached past his shoulder, lifted the microphone out of its clip, turned around to face 43 strangers, and started singing. Not humming, singing. Full voice into a live PA system at 9:40 in the morning. Some old standard about a bicycle built for two, with a little conducting motion going in her free hand. A woman near the back actually screamed. Dwayne was already braking, because 30 years behind a wheel teaches you that a person walking down a moving aisle is never good news, and by the time the coach was on the shoulder with the hazards ticking, Margaret was into the second verse. Wes asked for the microphone twice and got it back on the second ask, handed over pleasantly like a woman returning a menu. Then she explained herself to the whole bus. The drive was boring. Nobody was talking, nobody was enjoying themselves. And she had decided the group needed lifting since clearly nobody on the payroll was going to do it. She said she had taken initiative, and then, standing in the aisle with a truck blowing past outside, she asked for compensation, for the boredom. Not for the singing being interrupted, for the 2 hours of scenery that had driven her to sing in the first place, which she wanted logged as unfulfilled sightseeing time. A guy in row 11 was filming the whole thing on his phone. Nobody clapped. Nobody said a word for about 6 miles. 10:30 at night, in a marble lobby in Lucerne, Margaret was screaming at a 22-year-old about a key card that worked perfectly. It worked. Wes tested it himself later, twice, and the light went green both times. She'd been holding it against the wrong side of the reader. And when the kid at the desk, alone on a night shift, helping her in his 4th language, offered to show her how, she took it as being corrected in public and went off like a car alarm. Incompetent. Useless. She told him he was withholding access to a room she had paid for, which is a hell of an accusation to level at somebody who is standing there trying to hand you a working key. 2 men came out of the bar to see what was happening. A couple on the stairs stopped and just watched. Wes got down there at a jog, walked her up himself, opened the door in front of her, showed her the green light and figured that was the end of it. It was not the end of it. 20 minutes later, she was back down in the lobby looking for him. And now the complaint was about Wes. Because he'd fixed it. Because he'd solved the problem instead of taking her side against the staff. And in her book, fixing it quietly was the same thing as siding with them. She wanted the clerk fired. Not disciplined, not spoken to. Gone. She wanted the hotel to notify her in writing once it was done, and she wanted the tour company to confirm they would stop using the property until that letter reached her. Wes told her flat out he had no power to fire a Swiss hotel employee and no interest in trying. So she wrote it up right there at the front desk, standing, pressing down on the counter, the same counter the kid was still working behind, close enough to read his own name upside down. She wanted the room cleared. That was the demand in the Louvre, delivered at volume, in a gallery holding maybe 300 people who had all come to see the same small portrait she had. Margaret couldn't get to the front. She'd been standing in that crowd about 6 minutes when she turned around, found Wes, and told him to go get a member of staff and have them hold the other visitors back so she could have 30 seconds of unobstructed viewing hot as purchased. Wes explained that the museum doesn't do that for anybody. She said she'd paid for a guided visit and was currently looking at the back of a stranger's head. Then she said it again, louder, and people started turning around, and a guard drifted over the way guards do, and Margaret told Wes to translate. Wes translated it as a question about whether there was a quieter time of day. Margaret heard the length of what he said, decided it was too short, and accused him, in the middle of the gallery, of deliberately softening her words to protect the museum. That went on paper that night. She wanted a guide who translated accurately and completely, and she wanted the tour company to confirm in writing which one of them had actually been representing her interests. Underneath it, a second item. The painting was smaller than she'd expected, and she wanted the dimensions printed in the brochure so future travelers could make an informed decision. The Loire was supposed to be the easy day. Big chateau, moat, spiral staircase, gravel path. Everybody takes the same photo from the same corner and gets back on the bus happy. What Margaret found there was that the rooms were mostly empty, which is how those places are. The contents went out the door centuries ago, and what's left is the building itself. She didn't accept that. She got hold of a French staff member in the second hall and asked straight out where the furniture had gone, and when the woman started explaining the history, Margaret cut her off and asked whether it had been removed before the group's arrival. She actually asked that. She accused a working chateau of clearing out its own rooms ahead of a coach party. The woman looked at Wes. Wes did the only thing he could and walked Margaret out through the gift shop, and she complained about the gift shop as well, on the grounds that a facility with nothing in the rooms had plenty of merchandise by the exit. On paper that night, it came out as a demand that the itinerary stop using the word palace, since a palace implies contents, and she wanted the chateau portion of the tour priced separately so the empty portion could be deducted. The next one came out of a park in Innsbruck and it ran a page and a half. A woman went past with a dachshund on a lead. The dog didn't bark, didn't touch her, didn't slow down. Margaret was off that bench screaming about being attacked, in English at a woman who spoke none, at 4 in the afternoon, with joggers stopping and somebody's grandfather filming the whole thing on a phone. She wanted the woman's name and address. She wanted the animal taken away. When Wes arrived and pointed out that the dog had been on a lead the entire time, she turned it on him for failing to warn the group that Austrian parks permit dogs at all. Then she went to her room and wrote it up. 3 demands, numbered. 1. That the itinerary state in advance which countries allow animals in public spaces. 2. That the free afternoon in Innsbruck be rescheduled to an animal-free location. 3, and this is the one Wes still can't read out loud without laughing, that the tour company formally request the dog be rehomed, because in her assessment the owner clearly wasn't managing the animal properly, and someone had to raise it before it happened to somebody else. The first written complaint against Wes personally was about his shirt. Green polo, company logo on the chest, the same shirt every guide in the fleet wears, and Margaret decided somewhere around day 5 that it was unacceptable. Not dirty. She never claimed it was dirty. Her position was that the man leading a cultural tour of Europe should be dressed to the standard of the buildings he was walking people into, and that a polo shirt and cargo trousers in front of a palace was, in her word, disrespectful to her. She said it out loud in a hotel breakfast room while he was handing out room keys, and a Dutch couple stopped chewing. Then she put it on paper that night with a demand attached. And the demand was that the company adopt a dress code for guides, jacket and tie, minimum furrow starting immediately, meaning that day, meaning Wes was expected to find a suit in Lucerne before the coach left at 8. She had also priced it out. She wrote that a jacket could be obtained locally for under €100, and that the cost should not fall on him, since the failure was the company's for not having standards in the first place. The palace in Vienna got a written complaint for having a rope, gilt rooms, parquet, chandeliers, and a set of chairs behind a cord that Margaret decided to sit in because her feet hurt. A guard said no. She said she'd paid. He said no again in the tone of a man who has said no about 400,000 times, and her voice climbed until a supervisor came over and stood with his hands behind his back and let her finish. Then she went back to the hotel and put it on paper. Her argument was that a room you cannot use has been shown to you rather than given to you, and that showing is a lesser service than the brochure sells. She wanted the entire Vienna portion repriced as an exterior visit, and she wanted the tour company to supply her at every remaining stop with her own chair, carried in by staff if the venue objected, so she would never again be denied a place to sit in a building she had paid to enter. Wes read it twice on a bench outside, and then read it a third time, he says, purely out of disbelief that somebody had gone to the trouble of writing it down. The last one is the one Wes will be telling until the day he retires, and it came in on the second to last night in Vienna. 2 pages. Her position was that 12 days of a coach tour had left her exhausted, that the early mornings, the walking, the packing, and unpacking every second night had taken a physical toll she hadn't been warned about. And she was right about that part. Those tours are brutal. Then came the demand. She wanted the tour company to pay for a recovery holiday. Not a refund, not a voucher, not a discount on a future booking. A separate holiday, somewhere warm, 7 nights minimum, flights included, to recover from the holiday she had just taken. She'd already picked the region. She'd written down what she considered a reasonable nightly rate. And she had a line in there explaining that since the fatigue was caused by the itinerary, and the itinerary was the company's product, the cost of undoing the damage belonged to them, the same way you'd bill someone for fixing a dent they put in your car. Wes read it standing in a hotel corridor at 11:30 at night, and then he read the last sentence again, because at the bottom she had written that she was prepared to be flexible on the destination. That was the concession. That was her meeting him halfway. 19 years on the road, thousands of passengers, and one woman who turned a holiday she'd saved 4 years for into a filing job. So who was she really punishing? Have you ever met someone like this while traveling? If so, share your fascinating story in the comments and we'll pick the best one. If you watched this video all the way through and it made you smile, subscribe to the channel and give it a like to get even more interesting content.